Namaskar, welcome back to Media Scan and wish you a happy new year. Viewers, the 6-month-old Keir Starmer government in the UK has been hit by the biggest political scandal of its tenure so far. The case of grooming gangs running riot in the UK, victimizing minor girls and teenagers, and the administration as well as the government trying in fact to victimize the victims and protect the perpetrators has become a global controversy. So what is this whole scandal about? Let's take a look. The Keir Starmer government has been hit hard by the scandal of grooming gangs this week. These gangs victimize minor girls of various communities to sexually exploit them over long periods. Almost all the gangs are run by Pakistani men. Parents trying to raise the horror have been put in jail or been told to keep silent in the name of diversity and pluralism. Horrific cases of minor victims facing the law instead of their perpetrators or journalists being put in jail are also doing the rounds. The entire controversy made global headlines when ex-owner Elon Musk raised it online. PM Starmer stalling these complaints when he was heading the Crown Prosecution Service and safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips refusing a national inquiry have put the UK government in a very bad light. Pressure is now building for the removal of Minister Phillips. Meanwhile, the British media is also facing flack for not doing its job. So with that quick capsule, I now want to introduce you our special panel for this evening on Media Scan. Joining me straight from the UK is Amandeep Bhogal, a vocal political commentator who has been raising issues related to the Asian community as well as immigrants there. Welcome, Aman.
Namaskar ji, good to be on Doordarshan.
And also with us, Pandit Satish Sharma, another social activist, has been actively organizing seminars, debates, discussions on various issues which are plaguing the immigrant community and has been actively working on this particular subject. Welcome, sir. Namaskar.
Namaskaram ji, Jai Shri Ram. A pleasure to be with you, Smita ji.
Wonderful. But I want to come to Amandeep here first. Aman, do tell us in the beginning, why are these gangs of rapists and child or teenage abusers often referred to as grooming gangs? What is the background?
Well, it's quite simple. This is a national disgrace of national proportions, and it's a national scandal, it's a national cover-up, and it's a cover-up for a very simple reason, because for a very long time, for decades, going back as far as the 1970s, you've had these gangs of rapists, primarily Pakistanis in the UK, who have been grooming, so to say. So they will take hold of a young girl, and they will in many ways entice her, encourage her through various means by pretending to be an adult figure that she can trust, by trying to give her gifts, by trying to entice her with other things, and then win her trust, and then groom her to be sexually exploited by other people around the main gang leaders. And this is
so if that be the case, Amandeep, if that be the case, how is it that the British society and more particularly the administration, the law and order machinery, did not do anything to stop people from trying all these horrific, experiments?
Well, it's a very simple answer, and the answer is that the failed experiment of multiculturalism, where people have been allowed to live in silos, where political correctness has taken hold of whole communities, of the law and order machinery, of politicians themselves. So for a very long time, the Labour Party has inducted itself in identity politics, playing to the vote bank. So it's all been a cover-up, literally, not to upset a particular group of people. But you know what? This is exactly what has got us here in Britain in this mess in the first place, playing sectarian politics for their own political ends.
Okay, let me come to Pandit Sharma here. Mr. Sharma, very straight question, sir. if this is the situation that what Aman has explained to us, Keir Starmer, or to be clearer, the Labour Party government has returned to power just 6 months ago. So clearly there have been other people who must have been involved in this so-called cover-up if things had to reach such a passe.
This is an issue which goes back such a long time, and it's not as though only the Labour Party, this current government, are responsible and culpable. 14 years of Conservative government, and I know they had an opportunity, and they didn't manage to resolve this. In fact, I will share with you, I recall Priti Patel when she was Home Office Minister. She tried to actually deal with this issue.
Okay.
She put the Manchester police force under special measures. She demanded from them all of the files and the data to get to a decision. And you know what? Tens of hundreds of files, thousands of files mysteriously disappeared. Manchester police advised that they didn't have records of ethnicity nor religion when it related to crimes. So it's not just a question of government ministers. This is much, much deeper. The evidence already supports the fact that in every local authority where this occurred, the police were complicit with acts of omission or acts of commission. The local authorities who were responsible, and the vast majority of those local authorities, sadly to say, are Labour Party-held councils. But they
Why
also
would the police be complicit? I can understand politicians having vote bank concerns, but why should the police force want to protect perpetrators of heinous crime like this?
Well, let me share with you, the data is what's going to help clear the way and establish this. I know that in Oldham, there was one particular criminal who was involved in this activity, and he was running a grooming gang from within the offices of the local authority. He was referred to the police on 8 different occasions with evidence, and 8 times they refused to bring charges. On the 9th time, there was a compulsion and they brought charges. So this is very deep-rooted. Now, I don't accept that this was just because they didn't want to be accused of racism. I think once we dig down a little deeper, we are going to find corruption. We are going to find people whose integrity was compromised with financial transactions and other means, and that they were actually being forced into doing this.
Okay.
Keir Starmer, the
yes.
Prime Minister of a country, is avoiding dealing with this issue. Why? It cannot be just political compulsion. I'm fairly certain that more evidence is going to emerge.
Are you saying that Keir Starmer is trying to stall inquiries into these very, very horrific cases of exploitation, or are you trying to say that he may be complicit?
I'm going to make a very simple statement. When the Southport terrible murder and slaughter of those beautiful young 3 little girls happened, Keir Starmer interfered in the legal process by announcing, without evidence, that it was that the right wing in this country were, by inference, responsible. And now, as a Prime Minister and as a former Director of Public Prosecutions, you should not be making a remark, any remark at all, which would possibly influence the outcome of the legal process. And yet he did. And statistics is a very specific science. When we look for data, we look for statistically significant connections. And if you piece together all of the significant connections, there is a statistically valid outcome. And that is that the public sector in the United Kingdom has been protecting one particular demographic. The data is there, the evidence is there, and they have been covering up and concealing the actions of this demographic in a manner which is completely at odds with the manner in which every other community is spoken of. There's one thing that I just want to raise.
Quickly, please.
Indeed, multiculturalism is not the problem. This problem is nothing to do with the Hindu community, the Buddhist community, the Christian community, the Jewish community, the Jamaican community, the African community, the Polish community, etc., etc. All of those communities work and function within the boundaries determined by criminality. We have one community which has transgressed across those boundaries over 1 million cases of criminal rape, and yet suddenly the whole problem is multiculturalism. I don't buy it. The evidence doesn't support it.
Okay. So surely multiculturalism or trying to avoid racism of any kind cannot be a cover-up for shielding perpetrators of heinous crimes. But Pandit Sharma, allow me to come back to Amandeep Bhogal here. Amandeep, two things that have hit the headlines repeatedly in the past at least 3 days is, number one, the Minister for Safeguarding in Keir Starmer's cabinet, Jess Phillips, is being attacked and targeted because she purportedly wrote a letter where she refused a central or a national inquiry because she thought it was not required. And so she has been questioned about it. There are also demands to have her sacked from the government. At the same time, there are questions about Mr. Starmer's role when he was heading the Crown Prosecution Service, and perhaps he too did not take much interest in all the demands of such cases where the victims' parents and family members went to get justice, but they had to return disappointed.
Yes, indeed. I mean, look, the Labour government is absolutely jam-packed with people who are playing to their gallery, that is their vote bank in their local constituencies. But just going back a little bit, look, a lot should have happened to deal with this scourge a very long time ago. But let's also not forget that Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, when he was Prime Minister and Suella Braverman was Home Secretary, they are the ones who set up a task force to take to task all of these cases across the United Kingdom. And it was beginning to take effect. But coming back to the present government, well, look, Jess Phillips is the Minister for Safeguarding and Violence Against Women and Children. But you know what? Her constituency in Birmingham, again, she's played this vote bank politics. She nearly lost her seat. This is a safe Labour seat, which she nearly lost. She only holds it by 700 votes. And you know what? 15,000 of those votes are Pakistani living in the constituency. And the 5 new Islamist independents that took away Labour seats. So Labour Party politicians will have all of this playing at the back of their mind. And that will instruct a lot of what they do in terms of making these political decisions to deal with this. But as Elon Musk has in 3 days done more to shed light on all this, that the Labour Party has tried to do for decades, which is silence young white British children, and not just white, in fact. The grooming scandal affected other communities within the UK as well. We've seen cases of young British Sikh girls being groomed by the same gangs. So this is a national scandal, it's a national disgrace, and only a national inquiry.
But if I may just put a question here, Aman, I have been speaking to journalist friends in London, and some of them point out that while this is definitely an issue and an inquiry will have to be done, they believe that Elon Musk is making too much of a political scandal out of it with a certain political agenda. Would you agree with that?
No, I would disagree with that completely, because I think, look, the whole idea of Elon Musk taking over X or Twitter was the whole idea about truth. And this is about revealing the truth, which has been silenced and covered up for so long. And you know what? That's exactly what is coming out now. The truth is finally coming to look. With the fact we're just talking about this today on Doordarshan India, that in itself has proves that this has gone from a national scandal to an international scrutiny. And this is what this is about.
Yes, and there are global headlines on the issue, I am afraid, but and rightly so perhaps. But allow me to come back to yes, quickly.
Sure. I mean, let's not forget that Keir Starmer, as Director of Public Prosecutions, is on record himself deposing before Parliament a decade ago, saying that under him, the Crown Prosecution Service had failed.
Okay. Very interesting. Satish Sharma, I want to come back to you, sir. And since this is Media Scan, we cannot wind up this conversation without taking a look at what has been the role of the British media, the other media in Europe over this very, very disturbing subject. And allow me to go back in time a few years, and I remember one case of killing had happened in Uttar Pradesh, that of Akhlaq, in 2015, and the Western media, most particularly the British newspapers and the BBC, they went on analyzing and talking about and writing about it for almost a year. And here we have, as per media estimates, 250,000 girls who have been going through a terrible period of exploitation and sexual harassment. But the role of the media is constantly coming under question. And even now, the BBC is trying to quote ministers in its first headline, saying that this may be an exaggerated scandal.
Let me be stark and crystal clear. The BBC is an instrument of the British state. The BBC News is known for having weaponized sanctimony and weaponized information for political gain. The BBC is riddled with, shall we say, groups who are invested in making sure that nothing about this particular demographic receives the attention that it should be receiving. The case that you have mentioned of Aklak is something that I too recall. I also recall the BBC's documentary, India's Daughters, which elevated onto an international platform, completely without data to support it, that India was a terrible place for women, when in fact Europe, Britain, Germany and America, statistically speaking, have a much, much more horrific profile. The media is
Sir, the
complicit in
BBC also aired a documentary about a communal riot which took place 2 decades ago, just because it was time for elections in India.
Well,
Maybe they should look closer home.
I think it was Subhash Chandra Bose who said that had said that the British had elevated sanctimony into a weapon of diplomacy, and the BBC is the delivery mechanism for that. But it's crystal clear, the BBC journalists will go to a tiny little village in the remotest part of Bharat and dig up some sort of ancestral connection and identitarian profile, and yet when it comes to these issues, the one word, as Amanji has mentioned, is Asian. And this is a cover-up. We've objected to this, to the government, to the regulator, and time again, it has not been noted and it has not been accepted. But I'm going to share with you one word, and that is Oldham. Oldham is a small town where this case is going to go. It's the devastation that's about to emerge once the news of what happened in Oldham is public knowledge, is on a scale which is sufficient to bring down this government. I have never experienced or witnessed a time when the British population, the working class, were so angry at the king, the law, and in fact, God as well. Those are the 3 areas. In fact, in 1819, the workers in this country rebelled because they had lost confidence in God, the law, and the king. And this is happening now. Out of Oldham, evidence is going to emerge of the police deliberately concealing these actions, of the mayor of the town, Andy Burnham, who is also a very prominent Labour politician. Prior to being mayor, he was a front bencher for the Labour Party. They have had the evidence for this. It's incontrovertible, it's irrefutable, and they have concealed it. I think Oldham is going to be the straw that breaks the back.
I think there are other MPs of the British Parliament who have been, very vocally raising this issue. And now that it has hit the media, they have come out with lots of cases in their knowledge and how they had tried to raise the issue at various periods in time. But for obvious reasons, they were put down. However, from what you are saying, Mr. Sharma, do you think this is one of those media controversies which will come and then it will go into the background when something else comes up in a bigger way? Or do you think it might have political fallout?
The political fallout on this is going to be seismic. It is going to be a political earthquake. The nature of this issue is so deep, it's so visceral. One can't rely on the state to protect one's vulnerable daughters. And of what value is the state?
Right. Very interesting. Aman, I do not want to dwell on single cases because there are just so many, I don't know where to begin. But we do want to bring out 1 or 2 examples of cases which have become very big headlines in the past 2-3 days. For example, the very, very heart-wrenching case of a father who learnt about his daughter, being a victim of these grooming gangs. And when he tried to go and rescue her from the building where all this crime was happening, he was put in prison. Later, he was released because they really couldn't bring any charges against him. So obviously, being a father, he went back to rescue his daughter. He was again put into prison, and this went on for over 3 days, which is, you know, a viral video going all across media today. Then there is the even worse and much more disturbing case of a 13-year-old girl who, when she tried to raise the issue of what had happened to her, perhaps there were 5 or 7 perpetrators in her case, it was actually she who was put in prison, a minor, by the way, because it was thought that she was racially profiling the people who were involved. In yet another case, there is a victim woman who is an adult now, but she has narrated her experience of how, when she raised the complaint, she was asked whether she had consented to it at a time when she was a 5-year-old child. So these are incidents which not only put the entire government and the law and order machinery into shame, it also shows us how the preachy, the sanctimonious British media cannot look within, but it has lots to lecture about when it comes to democracy and multiculturalism and pluralism in other parts of the world.
Well, look at it this way. For far too long, you know, we've had this in this country, very agenda-driven mainstream media. And funnily enough, it is Elon Musk and the X platform, which is finally taking it to task. You know, people are now able to tweet and post about things which otherwise the mainstream media would never in a million years bother to talk about, because it doesn't fit their agenda. And the same applies to all of this, what's happening. And you know, it's not isolated. It's in towns and cities up and down the United Kingdom. For example, in Rotherham, who can forget that old, the first Pakistani peer created by the Labour Party back in the day, Lord Nazir Ali, that he himself was charged with child sexual offences. There was a time that places like Rotherham, you know, one in every 73 local Pakistani men had been prosecuted for child sexual offences. That is the level of this scandal that this country is finally going to get to grips with. And going back
a little bit to what, you know, there is often in anywhere in the world or in any society, there is always a tipping point, an inflection point, when you cannot cover up anymore and the people just rise up for justice. Do you think the British society has reached that tipping point, or is there more to wait for?
Well, look, the great British public gave the Conservatives, 14 years of continuous victories at elections to implement what the people wanted. You know, justice for all, lower immigration, dealing with crime. And a lot of those promises ended up being broken. And that's why the public are finally fed up. They want change, they want reform. And that's why Nigel Farage's political party is surging in the polls, because people seek an alternative, a real alternative, where they feel that, you know what, finally they're going to get someone who is A, competent, and B, going to put British national interest first and deliver for what their priorities are.
Okay. I just have time enough left for one quick question to Mr. Sharma. Sir, we also have to factor in the situation about how this whole scandal is playing out for people from other immigrant societies belonging to Asia, and particularly we are worried about the Indians. How is it playing it out for them? Are they also being kind of pulled into the controversy because they belong to the same part of the world? Or are you worried that girls of the Indian roots may also be targeted? What is the situation?
Yeah, I can say for a fact that this issue has been one which has got religious boundaries. Okay, statistically, again, the perpetrators of these crimes were openly declaring to their child victims that their religion allowed them to do this. Now, we reported to the police and to the BBC as a community that our girls were being targeted, Hindu girls were being targeted, Sikh girls were being targeted, and even Pakistani Christian girls were being targeted. That dimension cannot be ignored.
No, 1 second, sir. I do not think we have seen much about this in the media. Are you saying there are cases in your knowledge where girls from Hindu, Sikh community or Christians
yes.
of Indian origin have become victims of these gangs?
Yes.
Correct. We presented the data to the BBC. There was a journalist called June Kelly. This was in 2017, 2018. And we spent a whole day, myself, Lord Inderjeet Singh, and the leaders of the Pakistani origin Christian community. We spent a whole day with the BBC. They recorded everything. And then a few weeks later, when I chased them, I said, when's it going to be aired? They said, well, actually, we've made an editorial decision that the data needs to be verified a little bit further. Their editorial decisions are politically motivated. Again, the evidence would indicate that. We have seen this for a long period of time. There was even a time when a letter was being circulated, which was being circulated amongst the Pakistani Muslim community, and it had a league table of how much would be paid to members of their community if they managed to convert or abuse a girl from the Hindu community, the Sikh community, and so on. This is a long-standing issue. In fact, 40 years ago, a Labour parliamentarian called Anne Cryer, she spoke about this issue. Sarah Champion was a front bencher for the previous Labour government.
Yes.
She spoke about this issue
Yes.
and was relegated back to the backbenches. She was sacked from her ministerial position because of this issue.
Right.
There has been a long-standing problem, and commentators have, even within the Muslim community, have identified that there is a separation. Majid Nawaz on national radio, he said, this is a Muslim Pakistani problem. We can't get away from it. And this is now becoming unavoidable. I have never seen...
I am afraid we shall have to put an end to this very informative and enlightening conversation. But I am sure you will continue the good work that you are doing for the society, for the Indian community, as also all the other people there. And we will get back to both of you gentlemen in another episode as the situation unfolds. But thank you very much, Pandit Satish Sharma, for finding the time on a weekend to discuss this very complex situation with us. And Amandeep Bhogal, always so gracious to join us whenever we have asked him. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Viewers, the scandal of the grooming gangs and how the British government and administration has responded to it is certainly not a happy note to start the new year. But then, unlike some media in the West, we do not believe in brushing realities, harsh realities, under the carpet, because to bring in light, darkness needs to be fought. And this perhaps is a good message for the British media, considering how they have been treating the horrific cases of grooming gangs and the victims who are minor or teenage girls. We will keep an eye on how this unfolds politically in the UK, as also for the societies who are affected. Right now, it's a wrap up on Media Scan for this weekend. See you next weekend with another issue of media importance. Till then, namaskar.